Hi, guys. Welcome back to My Steps to Sobriety, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stefan Neff. Another fantastic day for an interview because I've got another overachiever on my show. You know, most of us die once. Some of us get the privilege to do maybe twice. Okay, and that's already quite a bit of, don't try that at home, kids, kind of thing. This guy did it dozens of times. Okay, it's just, come on, get a new hobby kind of thing. And you guys might think, okay, come on, this is bullshit. Well, first of all, it's not bullshit. I've met regrettably many patients like him in my work as an anesthetist in the emergency department. And it is such a hidden source of trauma, a hidden source of life coming to a halt, and you think, what the fuck? And so now it's high time that I speak to Fred Rutman, who is with me here, beaming all the way from Canada, and is willing to share his story of medical issues completely derailing his life, at least for a time. And then, unfortunately, things not going so smooth in the process. So where, unfortunately, things didn't work out so well. But let's explore your story. Good morning from me to you. For you, it's good afternoon, Fred. It's lovely to have you on my show.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on. Things did work out pretty well, because I am here. So much better than the alternative.
Touche. That is a privilege which we often forget that we actually have, because so many of us do not have that privilege and are no longer among us. Cool. What was happening, let's say, X minus 2 years? What was your life like when you were going out there as a man, trying to grab life by its balls and make the most out of it? How did your typical day look like?
I was a college professor, so I was teaching a variety of business courses, all sorts of marketing and finance. And, I had my own unique style of educating. I called it more edutainment because with millennials now, to keep them off their phones and their computers, you have to do something outstanding. And, 2008, 2009, fortunately for me, we were just getting into really good technology in the classrooms, and we were having the financial meltdown.
Yeah, of course.
So instead of just, giving the kids a textbook, I was able to bring up live streams and show them what was going on in the real world, especially the finance and marketing worlds, as this meltdown was going on. And
wow. And that is cool because you actually, from the word go, utilize technology and used it to your advantage. Because I have been to many lectures where that did not happen. And the style of death by PowerPoint can be just brutal. Now, I'm renowned for my PowerPoints. So I want to give my generation and myself a break. But I'm also renowned of having a lot of visual cues and often quite good jokes on there, or pictures that just flush in and put smiles on people's faces, and you keep going, and it's all incorporated into the lecture. So my people tend to keep awake. But like you, the edutainment, isn't it, is such an important bit that always made me the good lecturer. By actually, they often put me after lunch or some crap time because I kept people awake. I kept bouncing and was in their face, and it was cool. It was absolutely cool. I don't know how many calories I burned doing exactly that, but it was cool. It was good fun. So I really enjoyed it.
It is also exhausting.
Oh, please, isn't it? But I loved it. I mean, Tony Robbins, one of the big influencers out there. They put some monitors on him and measured him on a typical day, and he's burning 11,000 calories. That's just nuts on a 12-hour day. These are his 12-hour. Yeah, come on, people, jump around, and that is a hell of a lot of calories. For sure. Exactly, but so. Guys out there, if you next time you look at your lecturer and he is really giving his heart, he's working hard. That's a workout. So here you are, a man who is driven to give everything in your show. I call it a show, your lectures, and make the most out of it. So you loved your job?
Yes, very much. It was always fun to give students something so they wouldn't go through the hell that you did, building your career. So everything from, how to conduct a meeting to how to give a proper presentation. I would always tell them to, sign up to Toastmasters or to Dale Carnegie or anything like that. Even just learn how to keep eye contact.
Nice.
And that puts you ahead of so many other people in the workforce.
Interesting. And this so often it's the nonverbal communication. That's how you show up and the style that you settle into that suits you and that works with you. No, you're quite right. Oh, beautiful. So how long were your days?
I would teach 2 3-hour slots 3 times a week, which was a lot. I don't have a great visual memory, so I didn't recognize students. So
okay.
Especially when they're hiding behind their laptop covers and everything. So it's quite challenging to keep track of who's who and who's in what class. And but then,
so how many hours? How many hours a day would that translate to? You working, learning, doing things?
You generally prep an hour and a half for every 3 hours you teach, or at least that was my schedule. And then you had to have an hour and a half of office hours. So, it could be a 12 hour-ish day.
Okay. So that was on the days when you were teaching. How did the other days look like? Were you doing meditation, lying in a spa, having Greek virgins peel you the grapes?
Unfortunately, no. I wasn't having any of that. When you're teaching courses like I was, you have to really stay on top of the material. So there was a lot going on in the world with the markets melting down, with the recession coming on, with technology, staking its claim and everything. Right now we're having the battle over Twitter with Elon Musk and his technology. So you have to keep up on everything to make sure that you're cool with the kids. I mean, a year before this, I didn't even know how to pronounce Kanye West. So I got mocked mercilessly when I tried to bring him up in class.
Excellent. Yeah, the arrogance of youth. Here you go. So, okay. So you were basically there being immersed in your life. Did you, at that time, look after yourself? Or, how about exercise, hydration, nutrition, those kind of things that we nowadays believe in and preach and live by. So what about you? How did that go?
I have always been a bike rider, but I've always had a weight problem. So, that's a nasty comorbidity on its own. So I probably wasn't as healthy as I should have been, but the doctors, weren't really adamant in pushing me towards any change in lifestyle. And, I don't want to lay this.
Sorry?
Yeah, I don't want to lay this all on the doctors because you have to take some personal responsibility, and I'm much better at it now. But back then, if nothing's really afflicting you, you don't, or at least I didn't have that motivation to make any changes.
It's a big problem, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And then, however, so the gods were sitting up there in their pantheon, looking down and thinking, he still doesn't get it, is he? He still doesn't get the message. Yeah, right. Why don't we throw him a bit of a curveball? So what actually happened? What happened to you in that completely restarted your life and your outlook on life?
So in the summer of 2009, I started what we thought was passing out randomly. You know, I could be sitting in a chair like this. I could have been walking down the street, and then whatever amount of time later, I sort of came back to life. And every time I passed out, I hit my head on whatever was the hardest object in the universe that was in the vicinity, and sustained numerous concussions. And when you have those in short succession, they build on each other.
Of course they do.
So I really got the crap knocked out of me. So a lot of post-concussion syndrome. And as we talked about before, the doctors were convinced, you've got a middle-aged white male who's overweight. He must be having a heart attack. But so they kept testing me for that. And I forget the name of the enzymes they test for.
Yeah.
But they weren't showing up.
Troponins is the thing that we look for.
Thank you.
So, and they didn't show up. So they didn't think it was a heart attack in its own right. Keep going. What happened then?
But you would think after you've tested me 15 times and you don't find the answer you're anticipating, you would sort of move off your spot and say, okay, there's something else going on here.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen for a number of months. So this started in May, and it wasn't until August when I was on a Holter monitor.
Good.
And I had a number of these incidents, and they actually caught it on tape. And then I was in the hospital at that point, and the cardiologist, there was nobody around to read the results of the Holter because of budget cuts. So I had to wait a couple of extra days, and the doctor comes running into the room. He's like, holy shit, your heart's been stopping. Well, duh.
Okay. Ouch. Okay. What a shame that there was a delay there in the diagnosis. And you are probably quite right to be a bit upset about that. Always difficult to understand why delays occur, why people were not switched on, what they were thinking. So it's hard for me to comment, for any doctor to comment on something that didn't go as smoothly maybe as it should have been without knowing the whole truth and knowing all the details. So, but needless to say, you are quite right. Not only was there the sudden shock of, my God, what's happening, and then hitting your head, and not only having a period of, actually, you're dead, then also to include a concussion. Now, that's not a great start of a day. I'm very sorry to hear that, to start off with.
Thank you.
When your heart jumped into rhythms, did it actually jump into rhythms that don't support the blood flow, or did it actually stop?
My understanding is that it stopped. I have a severe full heart block.
Yeah.
So
okay. So in other words, the electricity that normally flies through the chambers of the heart and causes the chambers to work together in a kind of sensible way, that did not occur. So you had one chamber trying to do its own thing, the odd bomb, the other chamber doing much slower.
Yeah, or non-existent.
or non-existent. That's right. So now that's bizarre, because normally things like that you can actually see on the tracing of your heart, the routine ECG. So that was that not picked up earlier, or was that so intermittently that the doctors got fooled 15 times?
My understanding, and again, I'm not like you, I'm not a doctor, is that they tend to pick this up if they are doing the ECG and it happens during the ECG.
That's true. Okay, so it was intermittent. Okay, so I hear you. Goodness gracious. So a tricky one, because here you are, as a doctor, you come in after the event, you do check out things, what is happening. What did you feel? Did you feel that your heart was stopping, or did it just hit you like a pole axe, bang?
I felt what I call a brain quake, in that I think it's similar to what fighter pilots might feel when they're pulling heavy Gs.
Correct.
And, it was like I was having an earthquake in my brain, and it probably lasted for a second and a half. And then I would go tunnel vision straight to black. And then whenever my heart decided to start beating again, it started beating again. And we had some strips from when I was in the hospital, and knowing how long it takes for a code blue to get activated on, 3 to 5 minutes before I came back to life, everything started up again.
Okay. So 3 to 5 minutes until your heart restarted. So during that time, there was actually no blood flow. Okay, good. Thank you. So guys, the reason that I'm hunting a bit in more details into this story is to try to figure out what is the chicken and the egg here, because there you are with a concussion. So you hit your head whilst you fell down. Now, in its own right, if your heart stops and therefore the blood supply and therefore the oxygen supply to the brain stops, the brain doesn't like it. Okay, that's an injury in its own right. That's basically your first whang on the head. That's just not the oxygen. And then the additional whang is when you actually impact with whatever hard object is around you. So here you go. So we went quite a bit into medical detail there. I hope I didn't lose half of my audience, but it is so important to figure out what the hell was actually going on here. Because ultimately, we are talking maybe about blaming my colleagues. And I try to understand, is that really the appropriate way? I'm trying to figure out what is the sequence of events. And ultimately, you had multiple injuries to your head, not just from the sheer fact that you impacted, but also from the sheer fact that you had actually no blood supply happening for a period of up to 5 minutes. And that's scary. Now, that will scramble with a man's brain very, very nicely. It will also scramble with a man's soul. Did you feel anything? Were there out-of-body experiences? Were there near-death experiences?
I had a few out-of-body experiences, which were very weird. Most people ask if I had the come to the light kind of experiences that a lot of people claim. I unfortunately didn't have any of those. I feel kind of ripped off, actually. If you have one experience and you don't get that, fine. But when you get into the multiples,
I know.
Give me at least one.
Okay. What happened? What was this out of body? What could you see? What could you experience?
I was literally looking down on myself wherever it happened. I remember one time I had been riding my bike through a park at night, and there's nobody that comes through this park at night. During the daytime, it's well traveled because it leads to a school. So you've got all the students going back and forth. But I remember just seeing, my bike there, me there, and being very confused. Depending on your outlook of how your body works, and if you actually have a soul and it goes to heaven, hopefully, I'm guessing that was my soul, just looking down and deciding You know, am I going to stick around? Am I going to go back into the body? Am I going to go up? Am I going to go down?
And you're so right, because not many people do get the full-blown out-of-body experience, yet the amount of people who I've met who were in your shoes who literally were dead, who literally where the heart stopped for a period of time. It is not a given that something like that happens. So whilst you feel maybe cheated, I understand that, but the odds were, I think, stacked against you that you've got such an experience. But it is what it is. Was that a scary thing for you? How did you feel emotionally when you came around and in the minutes, hours, days afterwards?
I think I was in a lot of shock and didn't fully comprehend what was happening to me. Even after the doctor came in and said your heart was stopping, I didn't fully comprehend that I was dead, which is a pretty difficult thing to wrap your head around when your brain is functioning normally. And it took, a couple of years of therapy after that to really get a full understanding of how bad my situation was. But then the situation happened again.
Shit.
So, a couple of times, and then I went through some botched surgeries.
When you say botched surgeries, what did people try to do?
Well, the solution to my condition is to put in a pacemaker.
Correct.
And that's what they did. And I was sort of functioning normally, but I didn't really have a treatment plan. Like nobody addressed the concussions, the PTSD. We're so much in the infancy of learning about neuroplasticity and neurotropic agents and how to do all this, that I really didn't have a treatment plan. So everything that I accomplished, I mostly did on my own because my therapist was not available to me for a couple of years. And when I eventually told her this story of what happened to me, first, she's been a doctor for a long time. So she's seen, like you, a lot of stuff. And she couldn't believe that this happened to me. And I asked her a couple of years after that, what do you remember from when I told you this story? She said, I can't believe you're any degree of functional at all. So
my goodness. And it just shows that we focus on, as doctors, we often focus on the problem, not understanding the impact that a particular medical problem can have on the rest of the body and on the mind, etc. So it is, for example, to give you some statistics, after a major motor vehicle accident, the chance that you've got PTSD is at least 30-40%. So a ballpark figure there. So, and that is now more accepted. There are trauma specialists, trauma nurses that then visit you on the ward, check those things out, see how you're coping. The problem, of course, is that PTSD is a diagnosis that is done with hindsight, because it's normal to be hypervigilant. It's normal to relive all those things. It's normal to be heightened anxiety levels. That is all part and parcel of your healing, of your brain making sense of what has occurred in the first 6 weeks. But then if it lasts for 3 months and longer, and things often get worse before they finally, hopefully, get better, well, that's PTSD. So we look for it in major trauma. Minor trauma, no one thinks about it, okay? Oh, your thumb is missing, so what? Okay, so what? Put a bandage on and cool. The sheer fact that you are a guitar player whose life is you define yourself by the way you play the guitar. Well, you can try that without a thumb. Okay, suddenly those kind of things already. Shit, no, people maybe don't switch onto so majorly. Oh, I'm sorry to hear all that, because here you were left a bit alone to your own devices, and it must have been hard for you.
It was. I also don't want to give the impression that I'm, crapping on the medical system. It is what it is. Whatever industry you're involved with, you're going to have your superstars, and you're going to have people that you're like, how did you even get hired, and why haven't you been fired yet? And unfortunately, I had a few people work on me at the beginnings of this that were in the latter category. Why are you here? Why are you a doctor? Why are you a nurse?
Okay.
I had one person give me a so-called concussion test. The ones you see on TV and in the movies where they like, follow my finger kind of thing. And, that really doesn't tell you much about, what damage has had to the brain. And we don't really have a good tool right now that I've been exposed to that says, you've, unless you're doing an MRI or something, you can see brain bleeds and that sort of thing. But just layered concussions, I don't think there's a tool yet.
That's right. There are actually, but you need to end up in the hands of a concussion specialist. There are some ways that you can actually monitor the brain in a number of ways. And it's basically like a puzzle piece where you actually put the multiple pieces together. And it's quite a complex puzzle. And so unless you know someone who is doing that, you're probably just left with a vague understanding of, okay, he might have had a knock to his head. Well, so what? We can't do much, which is actually so wrong. There is so much we can do about brain damage. We can reverse Alzheimer's. We can reverse brain damage to quite a significant degree. And that's something that is only really in the last 10 years or so, we start to recognize the neuroplasticity of the brain is actually amazing and what you can do with it. So you have
if you let it.
Exactly right. So it is a journey that you're going on that changes your life completely. But then again, so has the trauma, and so has the initial whatever has resulted in the concussion. So how long were you left to your own? It was basically 2 years, wasn't it?
A good 2 years.
And then what happened? What changed? What was the catalyst?
Well, I couldn't work. I mean, I literally had a good chunk of my brain erased. So I couldn't teach. I had to relearn, all my core skills. I'm Jewish, so I've been doing Hebrew since I was probably 5 years old. My friends brought my prayer book to me in the hospital, and I could no longer read Hebrew. So an entire language had been evicted from my brain.
Wow.
I had depth perception problems. I had fine motor skill. I had memory problems. I was slurring my words. And the only way I know to improve yourself is exercise and try to learn. And so that's what I did. I started enrolling in a bunch of courses and riding my bike even more. And that helped a lot. I didn't know it was neuroplasticity, but that's what I was undergoing. And I got to a point where I was ready to go back to the college. And then this happened all over again. So, we talked about technology before, and, because we see the medical shows on TV or, in films like Star Trek or whatever, that they just have this super technology that solves everything. We put our blind faith in things, and the blind faith in my pacemaker was unfortunately not well founded. And I started well, I'm 100% dependent on the pacemaker. So if your audience wants a quick learning tool on, full heart blocks, they can go to the Cleveland Clinic website, and there's a couple of little tutorials on full heart block and what it does. But I was having these brain quakes again and hitting my head again, and it was just a repeat of everything. And they eventually figured out that one of the pacemaker leads cracked. And usually that's not something that happens in isolation. There'll be a recall because they notice a whole bunch of them in various patients. Well, but there wasn't a recall for mine. So it was just a one-off. So, because I'm special.
Indeed. And that's a brutal, isn't it? You think you've done it, and then again, the universe decides, yeah, right, come on, nah, we can do better. And so your machine that you rely on for your life actually cocks out. So that's brutal. And so the whole journey started again with the multiple times that things didn't work. May I ask, are you living in an area where there was not such a great medical coverage? Or are you living in a larger town where there are actually hospitals and pacemaker clinics and things like that?
I'm the first hospital I was in where I had my pacemaker inserted is not one of the higher quality hospitals. Right. I'm in Toronto. It's a major city. We have, some world-class doctors here. Yeah. And I just didn't encounter them in my first round. Yeah. Fortunately,
you don't need to be world class. You need to be of a sound, good standard, and that is close to 100% for most of us doctors. So there you are. It is again. It's unfortunately again that there were delays there. These delays.
Yeah.
How did you deal with them? I mean, you had problems to start off with, and there was a delayed diagnosis. Now, were you far quicker to actually challenge the medical system and say, come on, guys, get your shit together? One hiccup, I allow you, but with another hiccup now, where are we going?
It's, you're sort of limited in what you can challenge because you don't want to piss off the person that you're hoping is going to save your life. And they just say, oh, if you don't like me, find somebody else.
Yeah.
And again, there's this rigidity of bias in that we're the experts. What you're telling us isn't accurate. And I can't tell you how many times I've gone back into emergency, and I actually have 2 pacemakers right now running concurrently because of all these problems. I was told I'm one of 8 people in the world that have this. I don't know how accurate that is, if it's hospital, urban myth kind of thing. But I don't think there's a lot of people like me. And when I would tell a new doctor this, they're like, yeah, right, whatever. So I'm like, okay, you've got my chart in front of you. Read it. Just read the chart. If you don't want to trust me, trust 10 of your colleagues that have commented on this before. But they don't want to do it for whatever reason, whether it's time constraints or arrogance or just that, your patient doesn't know what they're talking about. They could actually just put their hands on me and say, oh, yeah, there's 2 pacemakers there. This is weird.
No, it is what it is. Your life stopped, literally, but also figuratively, because here you were this in your career, a happy man, taking the challenge of teaching young people, and now suddenly all that rug was pulled from underneath you. And was there anything to replace it? How did you gain hope? How did you survive on an emotional level?
I think part of it is having faith in God. And I realize not everybody has that perspective. I think I've also been given a resilience gene from my parents.
Oh.
And, genetics are a weird thing. They're a beautiful thing and they're a weird thing. And, if you get to a point where your epigenetic subsystems kick in and it allows you to access the full functions of that resilience gene, it's one thing. I guess I've been very fortunate in that, but you really, in my case, you don't have a choice of saying, well, I quit. I mean, if you quit, you're dead. Like, do I not call 911?
Yeah, no.
I mean, you just have to. And
but that was your immediate kind of reaction. Of course, you call 911. Of course, you want to survive. Mm-hmm. That is a given. But I sense that there was quite a bit of resentment and anger and frustration in between the lines here. Am I on the right track here?
Yes, but it took a while for that to come out. So as I started to write my book, it was more of a cathartic exercise, sort of like a journaling. And, all this writing eventually turned into what I hope is going to be a best-selling international, book. But all my memories and recollections weren't in place. I had to work through a process over years where I'd remember this interaction with this medical person or another medical. And so as I went further and further down this rabbit hole, I did become fairly upset that, I got such shit treatment. Excuse me. And, very frustrated that this happened to me and essentially ripped my life away from me, which I still haven't gotten back, but, I'm working on it. And so you're 100% right on that. It just didn't happen to me in instantaneously like a lot of people think it should.
I think that's really, really important because that in its own right is a trauma. In its own right, you are used to the medical shows on TV. Someone did a study quite a while ago looking at the success rate of cardiac arrest management in the hospital, and not in the hospital, sorry, in television. And it was 80-90% successful. And typically the guy coughs, then he gives a nice French kiss to his sexy nurse. And you just think, what a heap of bullshit. And I guess that's the same reality check is for every policeman who watches a criminal show who thinks, oh my God. For those of you out there, when it comes to the management of cardiac arrest, when the heart stops, unless you have got electricity around in the sense of a defibrillator, unless you have got someone there really more or less as a witness cardiac arrest, a community cardiac arrest where the patient is lying there for a few minutes does not end well. And we're talking about 0.something% survival in reality. And the longer this person is not found, the less the chances are. So I think that is a reality check. The survival of out of hospital cardiac arrest is not great by any standard, even in the best circumstances. So let's be quite clear. The sheer fact that you are here is a beautiful thing. So you've beaten the odds multiple times over. So let's give credit to whoever or whatever is out there. Something or someone didn't want you to stop at this stage, but they wanted you to learn lessons. So like it or lump it. So what made that awareness happen? So you sought some counseling 2 years down the line. So that sort of started coming together. But nowadays, you probably live a very different life compared with the life that you lived in the past. So that's where we started off when I tried to figure out, hey, what was your typical day like, and what is your typical day like now?
My typical day is very different. I spend a good portion of my day trying to find podcasts to guest on, like yours, which I appreciate very much. I think it's very important to get my story out to people so that they know, even if I haven't walked in your exact shoes, I understand what going through trauma and PTSD and post-concussion and those things are like, and that there are alternatives to what's presented in the traditional medicine realm. And I can talk about intermittent fasting a little bit if you want, which I think has been most responsible for my neurological recovery.
Beautiful, beautiful. So obviously you started working with people who introduced you to certain principles, which might very well be serving you better than maybe other ways of life. And now we're talking. So it's surprising that you come to intermittent fasting as one of the first key principles or key things. But hey, yes, you're right. Tell me more.
When I first was introduced to intermittent fasting in 2018, I was in my cardiologist's exam room, and he came in and he literally throws a book at me. And he says, buy this, read this, do this, but only after you get approval from all your other doctors, because I have an endocrinologist, I have 3 cardiologists, I'm just a mess. So, because it was primarily for weight loss. That's what the initial view of intermittent fasting was. It's a type of diet, and it'll help you drop some pounds. What we're learning now, just because research is just, decades behind the reality of what doctors are learning, is that there is an unbelievable healing component to intermittent fasting. And it does activate all these epigenetic systems, which are way beyond my knowledge base, which help you with neuroplasticity, neurotropic agents, autophagy, or you might pronounce it different.
Sounds pretty good to me.
Autophagy systems, all sorts of healing. And we're just starting to come around to that. People like Dr. Mark Mattson, who's been, at the forefront of intermittent fasting. He's from Johns Hopkins, and I think he just has a new book out, which I can't remember. So my memory is not 100%, but it does get better every day.
Oh, which is brilliant. And you're then, when did that change happen? When did it change from pure victim to survivor? When did that transition happen?
I would say probably around 2018, when I was starting to make progress with my therapy and writing my book, and it was coming to, something that might be tangible. And then I read The Obesity Code by Dr. Jason Fung.
Beautiful.
That's probably the first. He's actually from Toronto, and a couple.
Please, Jason
cardiologist.
He's my hero. He's a good dude.
Yeah. So my cardiologists have actually taken seminars from him, because we're 20 minutes apart, and so that's how intermittent fasting got spread to me. But again, it was primarily on the weight loss side of things, and as we've progressed, it's moved towards, as my friend Jen Stevens, I can do a book plug that I showed you before. She's usually 1 and 2 with Dr. Fung in the intermittent fasting realm.
Nice. Okay, good to know. So guys, when we are talking about intermittent fasting, you think, what the hell? They're brain injury, and now they're talking about weight loss. What the heck? Ultimately, intermittent fasting refers to the fact that for a prolonged period of time, in hours during a 24-hour cycle, you do not eat. Now, that sounds weird to the Western world. It is actually very normal. Many cultures around the world are actually living like that, and often those cultures who have a great deal of longevity, where people live longer. You look at the Mediterranean diet, for example, and you think, oh, good, I just need to have olive oil, sun, and I don't know what, maybe some feta, and that's it, and I'm going to be fine. What people forget is, whilst there are certain foods that are eaten there, they are eaten in a much different ratio, and they are certainly not as rich, etc., as our normal Western diet, and not as processed. But also, there are actually prolonged periods of fasting within the 24-hour cycle, and that actually stimulates your body to heal itself. Mm-hmm. Autophagy is meaning that you eat yourself. And that's true. So your body actually gobbles up itself, but not in a negative way. It actually attacks sick cells and cells that need to go because they are just rotting and doing things. So it is actually it's actually regenerating in a stronger way, just as much as you prune a tree, and the next spring will be so much better for that tree. Same principles in the fasting period. So fasting is often enough nowadays recognized as a cure for diabetes, as a means of improving your body in its function to tremendous levels. Not just, yes, as a side effect, you might lose some weight, but that is not why we are doing it. That is actually, you can change a lot of medical problems by fasting and intermittent fasting. So therefore, and Jason Fung has done some amazing TEDx talks and videos on YouTube. So it's beautiful that you were introduced to that. So great. So you were working on the underlying problem of the damage in your body, and you tried to restore that. Were there other ways that your life changed, that you incorporated techniques, tricks? What else did come?
Mostly on the learning side of things. I've been used to learning about finance and marketing for so many years that I don't think it challenged my brain to rewire as much as it could.
Yeah.
So I went to a whole different type of learning from Jewish philosophy called the Talmud. And it's these crazy rabbinic discussions from 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago. And just trying to follow these conversations is mind altering. It really challenges your brain. And I still do it because I think there's a huge benefit, no matter what stage of life you're in, to lifelong learning. And the more you challenge your brain, it's like exercise for the rest of your body. It just keeps you going and keeps you vibrant. And I think the intermittent fasting has a huge effect on mood because it affects your gut biome. So when you combine that with the learning and the exercise, it really puts you into a different sphere of existence.
That's very true. Very true. And there are so many more things that will materialize in your future path. Inevitably, I envy you because you're still at the start of your journey of healing, because you have got the privilege of exploring this path in so many different ways. And you will inevitably, you're dealing with one subset of trauma, and you have been dealing with that, and you've been taking action. You wrote things down. You actually put things into words. You retrained your brain. How beautiful is that? That is, you made such huge progress, and you're on this journey, and you're here now to spread the word. You're looking actively to help others. So you're already coming full circle from being sort of the victim to becoming the teacher again, and speaking out. So again, taking action is such a beautiful thing. And there will be more strings to your bow that will come into the future. Your focus on nutrition is very likely to change. The focus on your sleep, the hydration, those kind of things. You will learn biohacking, not necessarily in a true biological sense, but more in the sense of mind hacking. How can you actually deal with the emotions in a positive way?
100%.
Are there, indeed, is there meditation maybe something that might be worthwhile for me? Because just as much as the intermittent fasting is causing a reset in your body, transcendental meditation or other meditation practices are doing the same. Because what you're doing is you're actually stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system. So not the sympathetic, which is fight and flight and going out there, bang, 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 bang. But the parasympathetic, where actually you let calm wash over your body, switch off the fight and flight. And suddenly that is again a period where your body says, okay, we don't need to defend ourselves against saber-toothed tigers. We can actually focus on healing. And your body is clever. It knows where it needs to heal. So that's beautiful. So all those things are out there. And it's a beautiful, beautiful journey that you are on, that I'm on, and that it is a privilege to be on that journey. You are experiencing that. And I'm so pleased for you, actually.
Thank you. I think a lot of people, because of the frantic lifestyles we're living in the modern world, they tend to focus more on the struggle than the journey. And admittedly, that's a hard lesson to learn for many people, myself included. But as you mentioned, the body is just so smart, and it's got so many protective mechanisms built in if we just allow the body to access them. And for me, I can't meditate because of my various brain traumas. I just fall asleep. It just doesn't work. I can't visualize. I can't get in that rhythm.
Excellent. Okay.
In Judaism, optimally, we pray 3 times a day.
Yeah.
And that's a form of meditation. It might not be the Eastern form of meditation, the find your mantra and that sort of thing, but it makes you focus on something external to you, and says, I'm not the center of the universe. I've got to calm down and concentrate on this conversation I'm having with a being that I'll never meet. But it's a form of meditation, so that I can do.
More importantly, what you just realized is that not everything out there is for everyone. You, for reasons whatsoever, will be challenged with one thing or the other. And that's all right. That is just a reality check that, yes, some people get amazing results from certain meditation techniques, and others like you, sorry, that's just a surefire way of getting you to sleep. Well, to a certain degree, that's maybe not such a bad thing, such a bad realization. So if you're struggling, okay, how can I actually go to sleep? And you found out a way. So look at it positively, rather than feeling again betrayed by fate that, why can't I be like that? No, you're not, for reasons whatsoever. So, okay, you found one way that didn't work. Let's find the ways that do work. What does your brain like? What does your brain enjoy?
As I've gone through this learning path, and a lot of the learning I did is through Jen Stevens. She had a Facebook group that's sort of being archived right now. It had about 335,000 members.
Wow.
I became a intermittent fasting moderator. And so, again, the teacher part, right?
Nice.
Comes through. I just wanted to help other people. And so there aren't many questions on intermittent fasting I haven't been exposed to.
Yeah.
And what you quickly realize is that there is no one protocol, even in intermittent fasting, that works for everybody. And the speed at which it works is different for everybody. And what we saw, and I have a problem with anecdotal science. If you've got a sample size of 10 people and you see a result, that's anecdotal. When you have millions of people that are getting similar results, I think that's jumped from anecdotal to reality. These are confirmed outcomes. We would see that the body seems to prioritize healing over weight loss. And, it tries to normalize your hormones and get all these subsystems working again. And then you work for weight loss. But, some people, it might be a 16-hour fast every day. For some people, it's fasting twice a week. For some people, they need to do 36 or 40-hour fasts a couple of times a week. So you just have to play with it and figure out what works for you. Now, there's a couple of groups that we know shouldn't be doing intermittent fasting. Pregnant women, breastfeeding women, or people that have had an eating disorder. They should not be doing this unless they have serious medical oversight.
Thank you. That warning is really very, very good to realize. But otherwise, it is amazing how many chronic diseases benefit from intermittent fasting. So no, I could not agree more. Fred,
you
were.
I was actually diagnosed type 2 when all this started with me, and type 2 diabetes. And within 6 months of starting intermittent fasting, I was no longer type 2. I was off insulin.
Exactly.
I'm on minimal medications. It's just phenomenal.
Beautiful. And if you then extrapolate from that fact and say, well, actually, Alzheimer's or cognitive decline is nowadays labeled as a diabetes type 3. If you have reversed your diabetes, does that not mean also you're actually doing tremendously good things for your brain? And I venture to say, yes, absolutely. So I think exactly. And you're the living proof here. You're the living proof from being virtually incapacitated and having, for the lack of a better words, multiple strokes. Strokes normally means a blood clot shoots up and stops the blood supply and gives you, in an area of the brain, low levels of oxygen, and the brain dies. So that's that. You had it systemically. The whole brain got knocked because your heart stopped and therefore no oxygen came through. Plus then you banged your head. So for crying out loud, here you had some serious brain injury and it was manifesting itself and you are reversing it. How cool is that?
I'm an overachiever.
Yep. Exactly. Both in so many ways. We don't need to go there. No, brilliant. Fred, you're an amazing man, and you're on the start of your journey towards greater things. And it just shows that sometimes the universe and life has got different plans for you than what you initially set out to become or who you thought you were. So now 4 years down the line, you're a speaker, podcast guest, and who knows who you are in a year's time, because you've started this journey of self-love, of looking after yourself, of supporting others. And therefore, by supporting others, you hold yourself accountable. And that's beautiful too. So you're actually growing. So who knows who you want to be when you grow up. So it's cool. We are both in the same boat. Fred, thank you so much for being a guest.
I want to be an astronaut.
An astronaut, yeah, right. Oh dear, no. I think speaker and changing the world's view on concussion and brain trauma, I think that is a very worthy task and challenge. So now this is, I'm so pleased about what you do to actually go out there and raise awareness, because so many people are suffering and they have had maybe similar fates than you, and you have become a spokesperson for those people. So for that, I'm grateful to you, because we need to have that realization that there are often many detours in one's life before one finds out where is the right place for you and your right mission in life. You are a classic example of such detours, and maybe others can realize, okay, there is hope, and there is, whilst change is often drastic and dramatic in our life, it comes with benefits, and it comes with a new awareness that you're no longer taking things for granted. For example, the ticker that works regular in my center of my chest. I take it for granted. Everyone else does, until it does no longer function so well. So no, that's good. Fred, thank you so much for being a guest on my show.
My pleasure.
I'm wishing you all the best for the future. And you guys out there, never give up. I mean, Fred is the classic example of so many things throwing challenges to your life. And let's learn from it, and let's be grateful. So practice gratitude rather than attitude, and look after yourself. I think that is the biggest thing. So live with passion. Bye. Dream on, dream